Has this ever happened to you? You're framing your shot and realize the focus is off. You go over to your telescope, adjust the focus, check the framing again, realize you're not exactly sure where perfect focus is, adjust your telescope again. You then repeat this process over and over and over and over? Well, I've got a solution for you. It's kind of like a telescope cap you put over your telescope, but it has these things in it that lets starlight through. When you achieve perfect focus, the diffraction patterns line up in the center. Oh, you've already guessed it. Yep, I'm talking about a Hartmann mask. Oh, you were expecting something different? You thought, okay, let's talk about the history of the Bahtinov mask. Welcome to Deep Sky Detail. Before we begin, let's get this out of the way. We're all kind of pronouncing Bahtinov wrong in English. The name comes from an amateur astronomer from Samara, Russia. His real name is Pavel Bahtinov. So the mask just uses his last name. The B is pretty easy for English speakers. The A is pronounced like ah. The H is more like a h. And the rest is just enough. Put it together and it's Bahtinov. Pretty easy, right? To help us understand why amateur astronomers all over the world use Bahtinov masks, we have to go back in time a bit. Physicists, bless their hearts, have known how light diffracts for a long time. Around 1900, a German astronomer named Johannes Franz Hartmann developed a tool that helped focus telescopes. Generally, the mask has 2 or more holes in it. When the telescope is out of focus, a bright star will look like 2 or more bright spots in the eyepiece. As you get closer and closer to perfect focus, the bright spots get closer and closer together. You'll probably notice 2 things about perfect focus using this mask. First, the diffraction pattern has a very bright spot in the middle. Everything else is pretty dim. Second, there are diffraction spikes, but they're very faint. Fast forward 100 years later to the early 2000s. To get focus, many amateur astronomers shooting Jupiter and Saturn were using a variant of the Hartmann mask. Instead of a mask with circles, they were using masks with triangles. Perfect focus looked like this. There is still a bright spot in the center, but you'll notice the symmetrical diffraction spikes. Astronomers now had 2 ways to tell if they were in focus. Like the Hartmann mask though, the spikes were really faint. Because planetary imagers were using web cameras to take images of Jupiter and Saturn, they couldn't take long exposures, so the spikes weren't all that useful. And this is where Pavel Bahtinov comes in. There's a great interview that Astro Channel did with Pavel 4 years ago about how he made the mask. The interview is in Russian, but you can turn on English subtitles if you need to. So it's around August 2005. Pavel is in Samara, Russia. At the time, he was volunteering as an astronomy instructor at a children's summer camp. He had some spare time to do some observing and was thinking about how planetary imagers could focus their telescopes more easily. Keep in mind that this is 2005. It was hard to find the right focus using just webcams. People were literally cutting triangles out of pieces of paper, putting it over their telescope and trying to get focus by making the bright circles converge. But Pavel noticed something. It would be easier to use the diffraction spikes to tell if you've got focus. Why? Well, they're longer, and even if you're slightly out of focus, the spikes won't line up in the correct configuration. So Pavel experimented. He first tried to make the triangles larger. He figured that if he let more light through, the diffraction spikes would be brighter. That was true to a certain extent, but it also made the central circle brighter. And for Newtonian Cassegrain telescopes, the central mirror would get in the way. So let me ask you a question. What's the difference between the original Hartmann mask and the modified Hartmann mask? It's an easy answer. One uses circles and the other uses triangles. It's the straight lines that create the diffraction spikes, similar to spider veins on a Newtonian. There are 6 total sides of the modified Hartmann mask and 6 diffraction spikes. If you make a slit parallel to any of the sides, you won't get a new diffraction spike when you reach perfect focus. Rather, the spike will line up to the side of the triangle that it is parallel to. And that diffraction spike will get brighter. So the question now becomes, why have triangles at all? Why not have 3 sets of parallel slits that create 3 diffraction spikes when you reach perfect focus? That's just what Pavel did. He cut out a piece of paper using his new design, put it over a Maksutov Cassegrain telescope he was using to observe with, and used a security camera to check whether it worked. And guess what? It did work. Now the design here isn't his final design, but here's what he noticed when modeling the mask using software. There is still a central bright spot, and the diffraction spikes are now bright enough to notice if focus is off even by 1/10 of a millimeter. That's pretty good. He posted his results on a Russian astronomy forum, where it received immediate attention in Eastern Europe. Only one day after Pavel's initial post, other astronomers named it Bahtinov mask, and you know it had to be a great product, because everyone who found out about it complained about the clouds. But it took about 3 years until Denis Sakva, an astronomer from Kyiv, Ukraine, posted about it on cloudy nights, and it became popular in Western Europe and the Americas. Now there's one more important part of the story, and it's that Pavel did not patent his design. He offered it freely for you and me to use. Pavel himself stated, "I think that in most cases, patents stunt the development of science and technology. It hinders the natural flow of information, technology, and knowledge." That meant that anyone could use his design. That includes me, who as a poor graduate student used a razor blade to cut out a design for my 80mm refractor, or who as a postgraduate would cut out a design using cardboard for my RC, or as someone who acquired a 3D printer could now print his own masks for the price of the filament. In no small part, amateur astronomers all over the world are in debt to Pavel Bahtinov's efforts and selflessness. In a frustrating hobby, where people take it up and then quit, I'm confident that somewhere, someone didn't quit because they learned how to achieve perfect focus using a Bahtinov mask. I think I represent the whole astrophotography community when I say, thank you, Pavel Bahtinov. Большое спасибо.